Captain Sarah Chun stared at the intelligence report for the third time, her coffee growing cold as the impossible words seemed to burn themselves into her retinas. Callsign Ghost 7 had been active in 3 separate classified operations over the past 6 months, but according to every official record in the military database, Ghost 7 had been killed in action in Afghanistan 3 years ago. The woman behind that Callsign, Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, was supposed to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. Chun had attended the funeral herself. Maya Rodriguez arrived at Fort Braxton on a gray October morning, stepping off the military transport with nothing but a standard-issue duffel bag and the kind of quiet intensity that made other soldiers instinctively step aside. The North Carolina air was thick with humidity and the distant sound of artillery training, but Maya barely seemed to notice. She'd requested transfer to the 82nd Airborne Special Operations Support Unit, a move that raised eyebrows throughout the command structure. Most elite operators were eager to move up to more prestigious assignments, not lateral transfers to support roles. The other members of Alpha Team were already gathered in the briefing room when Maya walked in, and the contrast was immediately obvious. Team leader Captain Jake Morrison looked like he'd stepped out of a recruiting poster, his uniform crisp and his confidence radiating across the room. Sergeant First Class Alex Carter had the kind of specialized tactical gear that cost more than most soldiers made in 6 months, every piece of equipment bearing the logos of cutting-edge military contractors. Staff Sergeant Lisa Park carried herself with the swagger of someone who'd graduated top of her class from every advanced training program the Army offered. Maya took a seat in the back, pulling out a worn notebook that looked like it had survived multiple deployments. The pages were filled with handwritten notes in multiple languages, sketches of terrain features, and what appeared to be detailed observations about local populations and cultural practices, while the others compared their latest high-tech communication devices and discussed their scores from recent qualification exercises. Maya quietly reviewed her notes and studied the topographical maps spread across the briefing table. "So you're the transfer from the 75th Rangers," Captain Morrison said, finally acknowledging Maya's presence. "Rodriguez, right? What brings you to our little corner of special operations?" His tone carried the subtle condescension of someone who assumed he already knew the answer. Most soldiers transferred to support units because they couldn't handle the demands of frontline combat roles. "Requested reassignment, sir," Maya replied simply. "Thought I could contribute here." Sergeant Carter laughed, not bothering to hide his skepticism. "Contribute how? We're not exactly hurting for personnel, and our current intel gathering capabilities are state-of-the-art." He gestured toward a bank of computer monitors displaying real-time satellite feeds and communication intercepts. "Everything's digital now, automated. Not much need for old-school field work anymore." Maya nodded politely but said nothing. She'd learned long ago that arguing with people who'd already made up their minds was usually pointless. Instead, she continued reviewing her notebook, occasionally making small annotations in the margins. Her handwriting was precise, economical, the kind that came from years of taking notes under challenging conditions where paper was precious and time was limited. The briefing that followed revealed the unit's primary mission: providing intelligence support for high-value target operations throughout the Middle East and North Africa. The work was largely technology-driven, relying on satellite imagery, electronic surveillance, and communications intercepts to build targeting packages for special operations teams. It was important work, but it was also work that could be done from the safety of an air-conditioned command center thousands of miles from any actual combat zone. Major Patricia Williams, the unit's commanding officer, outlined their current operational tempo and success rate with obvious pride. "We've achieved a 94% accuracy rate in target identification over the past 18 months, she announced. Our Digital Intelligence Fusion Center processes more raw data in a single day than entire field intelligence units could handle in a Congo month during previous conflicts. Maya raised her hand, a gesture that seemed to surprise everyone in the room. Ma'am, what's the source breakdown for that intelligence? How much comes from human intelligence versus technical collection? Major Williams paused, consulting her briefing notes. The vast majority is signals intelligence and imagery analysis. We do receive some human intelligence reports, but those are processed through other channels before reaching us. And how often do our assessments get validated by ground truth? Maya continued. Do we track whether our intelligence products accurately reflect actual conditions in the operational areas? The question hung in the air like an uncomfortable challenge. It was the kind of question that suggested someone thought the current methods might be incomplete or potentially flawed. Captain Morrison shifted in his seat, clearly irritated by what he perceived as an implicit criticism from someone who'd just arrived. Rodriguez, Morrison said, his voice carrying a warning edge, I think you'll find that our methods are considerably more sophisticated than whatever field expedients you might be used to. We deal in verified, actionable intelligence here, not hunches and guesswork. Maya nodded again, making another note in her margin. She'd heard variations of this speech before, from officers who confused the volume of data with the quality of understanding. But she also recognized that challenging the established system too directly would only result in her being dismissed as a troublemaker who didn't understand modern warfare. The rest of the briefing covered standard operating procedures, security protocols, and administrative requirements. Maya listened carefully, asking occasional clarifying questions that demonstrated her attention to detail, but avoided any further challenges to the unit's methods. She was assigned to the night shift, working intelligence fusion for operations. In time zones 12 hours ahead of Fort Braxton. As the meeting broke up, Sergeant Park approached Maya with what might have been intended as a friendly gesture. Don't take Morrison's attitude personally, she said. He's just protective of the unit's reputation. We've built something pretty impressive here, and we don't want to see standards slip. I understand, Maya replied. What kind of standards are we talking about? Speed, mainly. In our business, information has a very short shelf life. A target location that's 12 hours old might as well be useless. We pride ourselves on rapid analysis and quick turnaround times. The special operations teams, depending on our intelligence, can't wait around for perfect information. Maya looked thoughtful. And accuracy? How do we balance speed with getting it right? Park shrugged. Honestly, with the volume of operations we support, perfection isn't realistic. We aim for good enough, fast enough. The operators on the ground can adapt to minor discrepancies in our intelligence products. That evening, Maya reported to the night shift supervisor, Staff Sergeant Mike Chun, a tired-looking veteran who seemed to view his assignment to Fort Braxton as a step down from more exciting postings. The night shift was smaller, quieter, and generally handled lower priority intelligence requirements for operations in Africa and Central Asia. Rodriguez, right? Chun said, barely looking up from his computer screen. You'll be working the Afghan desk. Pretty routine stuff these days, mostly monitoring communications and updating target folders. The day shift handles all the high-priority work. Maya settled into her assigned workstation, a cramped cubicle surrounded by monitors displaying various intelligence feeds. The work was indeed routine, processing communications intercepts and updating database entries with new information about known insurgent leaders. But as she worked through the night, Maya began to notice patterns that the automated systems seemed to be missing. The intelligence reports described a region that was largely pacified, with only occasional low-level insurgent activity. But Maya's trained eye, honed by years of actual field experience, saw something different in the data. Communication patterns suggested coordination between groups that were supposedly unrelated. Movement reports indicated supply routes that didn't match the official assessments of insurgent capabilities. Most telling of all, the human intelligence reports that did filter through the system contained subtle inconsistencies that suggested that sources might not be as reliable as assumed. By the end of her first week, Maya had filled 17 pages of her notebook with observations and questions that no one else seemed to be asking. She'd identified at least 3 potential intelligence gaps that could affect operational planning, and she'd begun to suspect that the unit's impressive statistics might be masking some significant blind spots in their understanding of actual conditions on the ground. But Maya also understood that raising these concerns would require careful timing and the right approach. She was the new person, the transfer who'd come from a supposedly less sophisticated assignment. Any criticism of the current system would be viewed as presumptuous at best, potentially insubordinate at worst. For now, she would continue her quiet observations and meticulous documentation, building a case that would be difficult to dismiss when the right moment came to present it. What Maya didn't know was that her careful attention to detail would soon uncover something that would shake the entire intelligence community. Hidden in the routine data stream she was processing were the first clues to a deception that had been 3 years in the making, one that would force everyone to reconsider everything they thought they knew about modern warfare and the value of human judgment in an increasingly automated world. The evaluation came 3 weeks into Maya's assignment, administered with the clinical efficiency that Fort Braxton prided itself on. The Intelligence Assessment Battery was a comprehensive test designed to measure analytical speed, pattern recognition, and decision-making under time pressure. It had been developed by military psychologists and refined through years of data from successful intelligence analysts. The test was considered the gold standard for measuring aptitude in modern intelligence work. Maya sat in the sterile testing room, surrounded by computer screens and timing mechanisms that would track her every keystroke and response. The other candidates from her orientation group had already completed their assessments, most finishing well ahead of the allotted time limits. Sergeant Park had bragged about completing the pattern recognition section in half the recommended time. Captain Morrison had made sure everyone knew he'd scored in the 95th percentile when he'd taken the test 2 years earlier. The first section tested rapid image analysis, presenting satellite photographs and asking candidates to identify potential threats, insurgent positions, and tactical advantages within strict time limits. Maya studied each image carefully, taking time to examine details that others might have missed. She noticed inconsistencies in shadow patterns that suggested some photographs had been digitally altered. She identified what appeared to be fake military positions designed to deceive satellite surveillance. But each careful observation cost her precious seconds on the timer. Time remaining, 30 seconds. The automated voice announced as Maya was still analyzing her 7th image out of 10. She could hear the clicking of keyboards from other testing stations as candidates who had finished early worked on additional practice problems. The pressure to move faster was overwhelming, but Maya's instincts told her that the details she was noticing were more important than the speed of her responses. The second section focused on communications analysis, presenting intercepted messages, and asking candidates to identify patterns, decode implicit meanings, and assess threat levels. Maya's background in multiple languages and her experience with regional dialects allowed her to catch nuances that automated translation systems often missed. She identified several messages that contained coded references to planned operations, hidden within seemingly innocent discussions about family and local events. But the scoring system rewarded quick categorization over deep analysis. Points were awarded for processing large volumes of communications rapidly, not for identifying subtle patterns that might take additional time to decode. Maya found herself torn between the thorough analysis that her experience told her was necessary and the rapid processing that the test demanded. The final section tested decision-making under pressure, presenting complex scenarios and asking candidates to choose courses of action within tight time limits. Maya read through each scenario carefully, considering not just the immediate tactical situation but the broader cultural and political context that might affect the outcome. Her responses were thoughtful, nuanced, and reflected a deep understanding of the complexities involved in real-world intelligence operations. When the results were announced 2 days later, Maya's scores told a story that seemed to confirm everyone's initial assumptions about her. She had scored in the 23rd percentile for processing speed, the 31st percentile for pattern recognition, and the 28th percentile for decision-making efficiency. Her overall score placed her in the bottom quarter of all candidates who had taken the assessment in the past year. Major Williams called Maya into her office to discuss the results, her expression carefully neutral but her disappointment obvious. "Rodriguez, these scores are concerning. The intelligence assessment battery is a proven predictor of success in modern intelligence operations. Your results suggest you might not be well suited for the analytical demands of this unit." Maya sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She'd expected this conversation, had prepared for it, but it still stung to see her capabilities reduced to a set of numbers that seemed to miss everything that made her valuable as an intelligence analyst. "Ma'am, with respect, I'd like to understand what specific aspects of intelligence work these scores are meant to predict," Maya said carefully. "Are we measuring the ability to process routine information quickly, or the ability to identify threats that might not be obvious through rapid analysis?" Major Williams frowned, clearly not expecting this kind of response to what was typically a straightforward counseling session. "The battery measures analytical efficiency, Rodriguez. In modern intelligence operations, the ability to process large volumes of information quickly is essential. We can't afford to spend hours analyzing every piece of data when operations are moving at the speed of digital communications. I understand the importance of speed, ma'am. But during the test, I identified several potential deception indicators that would have been missed by rapid processing. For example, in Section 2, there were 3 intercepted communications that contained coded references to operational planning, hidden within discussions that automated systems would have categorized as routine family conversations." Williams pulled up Maya's test results on her computer screen, scrolling through the detailed breakdown of responses. "Even if that's true, Rodriguez, your overall processing rate was simply too slow to be practical in real-world operations. We handle thousands of communications intercepts every day. We can't afford to spend the time you took on detailed analysis of each one." Maya nodded, understanding the logic even if she disagreed with the underlying assumptions. "Ma'am, what if I could demonstrate that my approach, while slower, might identify threats that faster processing would miss? Would that change the assessment of my value to the unit?" The question seemed to catch Williams off guard. She studied Maya for a long moment, perhaps recognizing something in her tone that suggested this wasn't just theoretical discussion. "What exactly are you proposing, Rodriguez? Give me 1 week with the routine intelligence stream that the night shift processes. Let me apply my methods to the same data that's being handled through standard rapid analysis. If I can identify actionable intelligence that's being missed by current methods, would that demonstrate the value of a different approach?" Williams leaned back in her chair, considering the proposal. It was unusual, potentially disruptive to established procedures, and would require her to defend an unconventional approach to her superiors if word got out. But it was also the kind of initiative that could prove valuable if it yielded results. 1 week, Williams said finally. "You'll work your regular shift and handle your assigned workload, but you can also apply your analytical methods to a sample of routine intelligence. if you identify anything significant that our current methods missed, we'll discuss your continued assignment to this unit. If not, we'll need to consider whether you might be better suited for a different type of intelligence work. Maya left the meeting with a mixture of relief and determination. She had 1 week to prove that her approach to intelligence analysis had value, even if it didn't fit the speed-focused metrics that dominated modern military thinking. It was a long shot, but it was better than being transferred to a position where her skills would be completely wasted. That evening, Sergeant Chun briefed her on the arrangement that Major Williams had approved. You'll have access to the complete intelligence stream for the Afghan sector, he explained. Communications intercepts, movement reports, human intelligence summaries, everything that comes through our processing pipeline. Major Williams wants you to document any patterns or indicators that you think our standard analysis might have missed. Maya nodded, already planning her approach. She would treat this week like a field deployment, applying the same meticulous attention to detail that had kept her alive during her years of actual combat operations. She would look for the subtle signs and patterns that automated systems couldn't detect, the kind of human intelligence that required patience, cultural understanding, and the willingness to dig deeper than surface-level analysis. What Maya didn't realize was that she was about to stumble across something that would change everything. Hidden in the routine data streams that everyone else was processing at high speed were the first traces of an operation that had been carefully concealed. For 3 years, an operation that would ultimately prove that sometimes the most important intelligence comes not from processing information faster, but from taking the time to notice what everyone else is missing. The week that would determine her future at Fort Braxton was about to become the week that would expose one of the most sophisticated deception operations in modern military history. The reassignment memo arrived on Maya's desk 3 days after her evaluation results were finalized. The language was bureaucratically polite, but the message was clear, effective immediately. She was being transferred to the Historical Intelligence Archive Unit, a position that sounded important, but was essentially a dead-end assignment for analysts who didn't fit the operational tempo of modern intelligence work. Staff. Sergeant Mike Chun delivered the news with obvious discomfort, clearly aware that this was a career-killing move disguised as a lateral transfer. Look, Rodriguez, I know this isn't what you wanted, but Williams has to manage resources based on measurable performance metrics. The archive unit does important work, just different work. Maya read through the assignment details without visible emotion. The Historical Intelligence Archive Unit was responsible for cataloging and maintaining decades of intelligence reports from past operations, organizing them for research purposes and occasionally providing historical context for current operations. It was the kind of assignment that bright, ambitious intelligence analysts viewed as professional exile, a place where careers went to die quietly. When do I report, Sergeant? Maya asked, her voice steady. Monday morning. You'll be working under Master Sergeant Patricia Kovac. She's been running the archive for 8 years, knows the system inside and out. The unit's located in Building C, basement level. Much quieter than this place. The unspoken message was clear. Out of sight, out of mind. Away from the important work of real-time intelligence support. Maya gathered her few personal items from her cubicle while the rest of the night shift continued their rapid processing of current intelligence streams. None of them looked up from their screens as she packed her worn notebook and secured her security badge for the last time. Building C was a concrete structure that looked like it had been constructed during the Cold War and forgotten about ever since. The basement level was reached through a security door that required special access codes, leading to a maze of corridors lined with filing cabinets and storage rooms. The air smelled of old paper and industrial cleaning solutions, a stark contrast to the modern, climate-controlled environment of the main intelligence center. Master Sergeant Patricia Kovac was a woman in her early 50s who looked like she'd been personally organizing every piece of paper that had passed through Fort Braxton for the past 2 decades. Her office was immaculately organized, with filing systems that appeared to follow some complex but logical categorization scheme that only she fully understood. "Rodriguez, welcome to the archives," Kovac said without looking up from a stack of documents she was processing. "I assume someone explained that this isn't exactly the fast track to promotion, but the work we do here has value even if nobody upstairs wants to admit it." Maya took a seat across from Kovac's desk, noting the shelves lined with binders, each labeled with dates, operation codes, and geographic regions. "What kind of work exactly?" "We maintain the institutional memory of military intelligence operations going back 40 years. Everything that happens in the field generates reports, assessments, and documentation. Most of it gets filed and forgotten. But sometimes patterns emerge over time that weren't visible during the original operations. We're the ones who find those patterns." Kovac finally looked up, studying Maya with the calculating gaze of someone who'd learned to assess people quickly and accurately. "I read your evaluation scores. Terrible processing speed, excellent attention to detail. Perfect for archive work. Actually, the question is whether you're going to spend your time here sulking about being exiled, or whether you're going to learn something useful." "I'd like to learn, Sergeant." "Good, because I'm going to teach you something that the fast track analysts upstairs never figure out. Intelligence isn't just about what's happening now. It's about understanding how what's happening now connects to everything that happened before. The archives contain decades of lessons that could prevent future mistakes, if anyone bothered to study them." Kovac led Maya through the archive system, explaining how intelligence reports were categorized by region, time period, operation type, and classification level. The basement contained physical files dating back to the 1980s, while more recent documents were stored in digital format, but still required careful organization and cross-referencing. "Your primary assignment will be the Central Asian Theater files from 2018 to present," Kovac explained, pulling several thick binders from a shelf. "We're conducting a comprehensive review of intelligence effectiveness in the region, comparing initial assessments with actual operational outcomes. It's tedious work, but it reveals interesting patterns about what kinds of intelligence prove reliable over time." Maya spent her first week in the archives, learning the filing system and beginning her review of the Central Asian intelligence files. The work was indeed tedious, requiring her to read through hundreds of intelligence reports, cross-reference them with operational summaries, and document cases where initial assessments had proven accurate or inaccurate. But as she worked through the files, Maya began to notice something that hadn't been visible to the original analysts. Many of the intelligence reports contained subtle inconsistencies that became apparent only when viewed across extended time periods. Sources who were considered reliable had provided information that proved questionable when compared with later developments. Operational assessments that had seemed reasonable at the time showed patterns of systematic error when examined in aggregate. Most interesting of all were the files related to Afghanistan operations from 2019 to 2021. Maya found numerous intelligence reports that described successful missions, eliminated targets, and pacified regions. But when she cross-referenced these reports with subsequent intelligence from the same areas, the patterns didn't match. Insurgent leaders who had been reported killed were appearing in later communications intercepts. Regions that had been declared secure were generating increasing levels of hostile activity. Maya brought her observations to Kovac's attention during their weekly review meeting. "Sergeant, I'm finding some concerning inconsistencies in the Afghanistan files. Intelligence reports that don't seem to match subsequent developments in the same operational areas." Kovac leaned forward, her expression suddenly more serious. "What kind of inconsistencies?" Multiple cases where high-value targets were reported eliminated, but then appear to be active again in later intelligence. Communication patterns that suggest ongoing insurgent operations in areas that were assessed as pacified. Source reporting that doesn't align with other intelligence from the same time periods. How many cases are we talking about? Maya consulted her notebook, which had grown thick with detailed observations over the past week. So far, I've documented 47 specific instances where initial intelligence reports appear to have been inaccurate or incomplete. The pattern is consistent enough that it doesn't seem like random error. Kovuk was quiet for a long moment, studying the documentation that Maya had prepared. Rodriguez, this kind of pattern analysis is exactly why the archive unit exists. But findings like this can be ... sensitive. If you're right, it suggests systematic problems with intelligence collection or assessment that affected real operations. What should I do with this information? Continue your analysis. Document everything meticulously. And be very careful about who you share this with until we understand the full scope of what you're finding. Intelligence failures at this scale don't happen by accident, and they don't get fixed easily. Maya returned to her work with renewed focus, but also with a growing sense that she'd stumbled onto something much larger than inconsistent filing. The patterns she was seeing suggested not just intelligence failures, but something more systematic and potentially more troubling, hidden in the archives. Surrounded by decades of forgotten reports and overlooked documentation, Maya was about to uncover evidence of a deception that had been 3 years in the making. A deception that would explain not just the inconsistencies in the intelligence files, but something far more personal and dangerous that connected directly to her own past. 6 weeks into her archive assignment, Maya had developed a routine that would have impressed even the most meticulous researchers. She arrived each morning at 0600, 2 hours before her official shift began, using the quiet time to review files without interruption. Her notebook had expanded into 3 separate volumes, each dedicated to different aspects of her analysis. Operational inconsistencies, source reliability patterns, and what she'd begun calling ghost operations. Missions that appeared in intelligence summaries, but seemed to have no corresponding operational reality. Master Sergeant Kovac had given Maya increasing autonomy in her research, recognizing that her systematic approach was uncovering patterns that had been invisible to previous analysts. The archive's digital search capabilities were limited, requiring manual cross-referencing that suited Maya's methodical nature perfectly. While upstairs analysts processed thousands of current intelligence reports at lightning speed, Maya worked through historical data with archaeological patience, treating each document like a piece of evidence in a larger puzzle. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning while Maya was reviewing communication intercepts from a remote valley in eastern Afghanistan. The intercepts were routine, part of ongoing surveillance of suspected insurgent communications networks. But as Maya read through the technical details of signal collection, she noticed something that made her pause and reread the entire file. The intercepts had been collected by a signals intelligence unit that, according to the operational summary, had been conducting routine monitoring from a forward operating base. But Maya's experience with communications intelligence told her that the signal characteristics described in the technical annexes were inconsistent with the reported collection location. The signal strength, propagation patterns, and background interference suggested that the intercepts had been collected from a much closer position than the official reports indicated. Maya pulled additional files related to the same operational area, looking for patterns that might explain the discrepancy. What she found was a series of intelligence reports spanning 18 months that all showed similar inconsistencies. Operations that were supposed to have been conducted from established bases showed technical signatures suggesting much closer proximity to target areas. Communications intercepts that should have required advanced collection equipment appeared to have been gathered using simpler, More portable systems. Most puzzling of all were references to a signals intelligence specialist identified only by the Callsign Ghost 7. The Callsign appeared in dozens of operational reports, always in connection with high-quality intelligence collection from difficult target areas. But when Maya tried to cross-reference Ghost 7 with personnel databases, she found no matching records. No individual was officially assigned that Callsign during the time periods covered by the reports. Maya brought her findings to Kovac during their weekly meeting, spreading her documentation across the conference table in the archive's small briefing room. "Sergeant, I think we need to contact someone with higher security clearance. I'm finding evidence of operations that don't match any official records." Kovac studied the documents carefully, her expression growing more concerned as she reviewed Maya's analysis. "Walk me through exactly what you're seeing." "These signal intercepts from the Kunar province show technical characteristics that are impossible given the reported collection methods. The signal strength suggests the collection equipment was within 5 kilometers of the targets, but the operational summaries indicate the nearest friendly forces were at least 30 kilometers away." Maya turned to another set of documents, pointing to specific technical annotations. "Here's another example from Helmand Province. 12 separate intelligence reports reference communications intercepts collected by Ghost 7, but there's no record of any signals, intelligence unit, or individual assigned that Callsign in that operational area during those time periods." "And you're certain about the technical analysis?" Kovac asked. "I've been doing signals intelligence analysis for 8 years, including 2 deployments where I was responsible for exactly this kind of collection. These reports describe collection scenarios that are technically impossible unless someone was operating much closer to the targets than officially acknowledged." Kovac gathered the documents, organizing them into neat stacks. "Rodriguez, what you're describing suggests the existence of operations that weren't officially sanctioned or recorded. That's complicated." "I understand, Sergeant, but there's more." Maya opened her third notebook, revealing pages of cross-reference data that had taken weeks to compile. "I've found similar patterns in 43 separate operational areas across Afghanistan, Pakistan, and northern Iraq. Always the same technical inconsistencies, always references to Ghost 7, always intelligence collection that shouldn't have been possible from official positions." The implications were staggering. Maya was describing evidence of extensive covert operations that had been conducted outside normal command structures, operations sophisticated enough to generate high-quality intelligence, but hidden enough to leave no official records. Either someone had been conducting unauthorized missions for years, or there were operational capabilities that existed completely outside the known command structure. "I need to make some phone calls," Kovac said finally. "In the meantime, I want you to continue your analysis, but I also want you to be extremely careful about documenting your research process. If this goes where I think it might, we'll need to prove that your findings are based on legitimate analysis, not speculation." That afternoon, Maya received an unexpected visitor. Colonel James Harrison from the Inspector General's office arrived. Without advance notice, accompanied by a civilian analyst whose credentials identified him as working for the Defense Intelligence Agency. Their presence in the usually forgotten archive basement sent a clear message that Maya's research had attracted attention at very high levels. "Specialist Rodriguez," Colonel Harrison said, settling into one of the archive's uncomfortable metal chairs, "I understand you've been conducting some interesting research into historical intelligence operations. I'd like to review your methodology and findings." Maya spent the next 3 hours walking the colonel and his analyst through her research, explaining her technical analysis and demonstrating how she'd identified the operational inconsistencies. Both men took extensive notes, asking detailed questions about signal propagation, collection equipment capabilities, and the specific technical markers that had led to her conclusions. the civilian analyst who introduced himself only as Mr. Peterson, seemed particularly interested in the Ghost 7 Callsign references. You've documented 43 separate mentions of this Callsign across multiple operational theaters. Have you found any pattern in the types of intelligence that Ghost 7 was reportedly collecting? Maya consulted her notes, flipping through pages of carefully organized data. The intelligence was consistently high quality and tactically actionable. Communications intercepts that led to successful operations, target identification that proved accurate, and situational awareness that prevented several potential casualties among friendly forces. Whoever Ghost 7 was, they were exceptionally good at their job. And you're certain there's no official record of this individual or unit? I've checked every database I have access to. No personnel records, no unit assignments, no equipment authorizations. As far as official records are concerned, Ghost 7 doesn't exist. Colonel Harrison exchanged a meaningful look with Peterson before continuing. Rodriguez, your analysis has identified what could be evidence of significant operational security violations. If accurate, your findings suggest that unauthorized operations were conducted for extended periods without proper oversight or documentation. Maya felt a chill of recognition. She'd been involved in enough classified operations to understand the implications of what she'd discovered. Unauthorized operations in hostile territory could represent anything from rogue military units to foreign intelligence activities to something even more complex and dangerous. Sir, I want to emphasize that my analysis is based entirely on publicly available technical data and official intelligence reports, Maya said carefully. I haven't accessed any classified operational details or attempted to identify specific individuals involved in these activities. We understand, Peterson replied. But your technical analysis has raised questions that require investigation at higher classification levels. We'll need to restrict your access to these files while we conduct a more comprehensive review. As the two men prepared to leave, Colonel Harrison paused at the archive security door. Rodriguez, you've done excellent analytical work here. The kind of attention to detail and pattern recognition that makes the difference between good intelligence and exceptional intelligence. Your findings will be taken very seriously. After they left, Maya sat in the archive's fluorescent-lit silence, surrounded by decades of forgotten reports and overlooked documentation. She'd spent 6 weeks meticulously documenting evidence of operations that officially didn't exist, conducted by someone who had no official identity. Her careful analysis had attracted the attention of the Inspector General's office and the Defense Intelligence Agency, but she still had no idea what she'd actually uncovered. What Maya didn't know was that her research had just opened an investigation that would ultimately lead to her own past, to operations she'd been involved in 3 years earlier, and to the discovery that sometimes the most important intelligence comes from people who officially don't exist. The security clearance upgrade came with conditions that Maya hadn't expected. Within 48 hours of Colonel Harrison's visit, she found herself relocated to a secured compartmented information facility 3 levels below the main archive, working under restrictions that limited her contact with other personnel and required her to sign daily non-disclosure agreements that carried criminal penalties for violation. The new workspace was sterile and windowless, equipped with computer terminals that could access classified databases far beyond anything Maya had seen during her previous assignments. Master Sergeant Kovac visited once to brief her on the new arrangements, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes conveying a warning that Maya understood immediately. She was now working on something that could either advance her career significantly or destroy it completely. Rodriguez, you're going to be working with intelligence files that are classified at levels I don't even have access to, Kovac explained. Your analysis identified patterns that require investigation at much higher classification levels. You'll Be reporting directly to a joint task force that includes representatives from Defense Intelligence Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, and Special Operations Command. Maya nodded, understanding that her methodical research into historical inconsistencies had somehow evolved into something much larger and more sensitive. What specifically am I being asked to analyze? Everything related to the Ghost 7 Callsign and the operational patterns you identified. But now you'll have access to classified operational records, personnel files, and intelligence products that weren't available in the regular archives. The task force wants you to determine whether the inconsistencies you found represent operational, security violations, foreign intelligence activities, or something else entirely. The first classified files that Maya accessed changed her understanding of everything she'd discovered in the archives. The Ghost 7 Callsign wasn't just a mysterious reference in intelligence reports. It was connected to a highly classified, special access program that had been conducting deep cover operations in denied areas for over 5 years. The program, designated Project Lazarus, involved small teams of intelligence specialists who operated under non-official cover, maintaining their positions in hostile territory for extended periods while collecting intelligence that couldn't be gathered through conventional means. According to the classified documentation, Project Lazarus teams operated with minimal oversight and maximum deniability. They were inserted into operational areas under carefully constructed cover identities, often posing as local nationals or third-country contractors. Their missions could last months or even years, during which they had no official contact with military command structures. The intelligence they collected was laundered through multiple channels before reaching operational commanders, ensuring that their activities remained completely hidden from foreign intelligence services. Maya spent her first week in the secured facility reading through operational summaries that revealed the scope and sophistication of Project Lazarus activities. Teams had been deployed throughout Central Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa, collecting intelligence on terrorist networks, insurgent operations, and foreign military capabilities. The quality of their intelligence had been exceptional, leading to dozens of successful operations and preventing numerous attacks against American forces. But as Maya dug deeper into the classified files, she began to find the same kinds of inconsistencies that had originally attracted her attention. In the historical archives, personnel records showed team members being deployed to operational areas where they were simultaneously listed as being in other locations entirely. Equipment authorizations didn't match the technical capabilities described in intelligence reports. Most troubling of all, several team members appeared in operational summaries months after their official records indicated they had been killed in action. The breakthrough came when Maya accessed a classified personnel database that included biometric records for all Project Lazarus participants. Among the files was a complete dossier for the individual assigned the Ghost 7 Callsign, Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez, a signals intelligence specialist with extensive language training and experience in deep cover operations. According to her official records, Vasquez had been killed in action during a classified operation in Afghanistan in October 2021. Her body recovered and returned to the United States for burial with full military honors. But Maya's technical analysis of the intelligence reports clearly showed that Ghost 7 had been active in multiple operational areas throughout 2022, 2023, and into 2024. Either someone else had assumed the Ghost 7 identity after Vasquez's death, or Elena Vasquez was still alive and operating under deep cover, despite being officially listed as killed in action. Maya documented her findings in a comprehensive report that she submitted to the Joint Task Force through secure channels. The response came back within hours. She was directed to conduct a complete analysis of all personnel associated with Project Lazarus, focusing specifically on discrepancies between official status and operational activity. The task force wanted to know how many other supposedly dead operatives might still be conducting classified missions. The investigation that followed consumed 3 weeks and revealed a pattern that shocked even Maya's methodical, analytical mind. Of the 47 operatives who had been officially listed as killed in action during Project Lazarus operations, at least 12 showed evidence of continued activity in intelligence reports. Technical signatures, collection patterns, and operational methodologies that were consistent with their known capabilities appeared in classified reports months or even years after their supposed deaths. Maya's analysis suggested that Project Lazarus had developed a protocol for officially killing operatives who needed to transition to even deeper cover identities. The deaths were documented with sufficient detail to satisfy official requirements, including fabricated casualty reports and staged recovery operations. The operatives were then provided with completely new identities and continued their missions with even greater operational security. Protected by the ultimate cover story, they were officially dead. The implications were staggering from both operational and legal perspectives. If Maya's analysis was correct, the military had been conducting operations using personnel who officially didn't exist, in violation of multiple laws governing military operations and congressional oversight. The operatives themselves existed in a legal gray area where they had no official status, no official support, and no official protection if their activities were discovered by hostile forces. Maya's final report to the task force documented 12 cases where supposedly deceased operatives showed evidence of continued activity. She provided technical analysis supporting each case, cross-referenced operational timelines, and identified specific intelligence products that could only have been collected by individuals with the documented capabilities of the supposedly dead operatives. The response from the task force was immediate and dramatic. Maya was informed that her analysis had triggered a comprehensive review of Project Lazarus operations, and that congressional intelligence committees were being briefed on her findings. She was also told that her own security clearance was being upgraded again, and that she would be detailed to work directly with a special investigation team tasked with locating and identifying the status of missing operatives. But the most shocking development came in the form of a classified message that arrived on Maya's secure terminal 3 days after she submitted her final report. The message was brief, containing only a few lines of text, but its contents made Maya's blood run cold. The message read, "Analysis accurate. 12 confirmed active. Recommend immediate extraction protocols for Ghost 7 and associated operatives. Subject has compromised position through recent operational activities. Hostile intelligence service is now aware of continued existence. Operational security critically degraded." Maya read the message 3 times before its full implications became clear. Her analysis hadn't just identified a pattern of bureaucratic deception. It had potentially exposed active deep cover operatives to capture or assassination by revealing that they were still alive and operational. Elena Vasquez, the signals intelligence specialist operating under the Ghost 7 Callsign, was now in mortal danger because Maya's methodical research had inadvertently compromised 3 years of carefully constructed operational security. Woman whose technical analysis had attracted the attention of the highest levels of military intelligence had just realized that her quest for analytical precision might have signed someone's death warrant. Someone who, according to all official records, was already dead. The emergency briefing convened at 0400 hours in a conference room that Maya had never seen before, located in what appeared to be a subterranean command center beneath Fort Braxton. The attendees included officials whose security badges indicated clearances and organizational affiliations that Maya couldn't have imagined existed. General Patricia Morrison, the base commander, sat at the head of a polished table surrounded by representatives from the Defense Intelligence Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, and Joint Special Operations Command. Maya entered the room carrying a single classified folder containing her most recent analysis. feeling the weight of dozens of eyes assessing her as she took the only available seat. The atmosphere was tense with the kind of urgency that suggested real time. Operational decisions were being made based on intelligence that could change by the hour. Specialist Rodriguez, General Morrison began without preamble. Your analytical work has identified a critical operational security compromise that affects multiple ongoing classified missions. We need to understand exactly how you reached your conclusions and what additional information might be available through continued analysis. Maya opened her folder, revealing pages of technical data that had taken weeks to compile and cross-reference. Ma'am, my analysis identified 12 individuals who appear to be conducting operations, despite being officially listed as killed in action. The technical signatures in classified intelligence reports match the documented capabilities and operational patterns of supposedly deceased Project Lazarus operatives. A civilian analyst wearing a CIA badge leaned forward, his expression grim. Rodriguez, are you absolutely certain about your technical analysis? We're talking about operations that have been running for years based on the assumption that these individuals were safely dead and buried. Sir, I've triple-checked every technical indicator. Signal collection methods, communication protocols, operational timing, and intelligence quality all match the documented capabilities of specific individuals. Unless someone has been meticulously replicating their exact methods and capabilities, these operatives are still active. General Morrison gestured to a secure telephone in the center of the table. We've been in contact with our operational commanders in the affected regions. Within the past 72 hours, hostile intelligence services have begun actively searching for individuals matching the descriptions of supposedly dead American operatives. Your analysis appears to have been paralleled by foreign intelligence assessments that reach similar conclusions. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. Her methodical research hadn't just identified a pattern. It had apparently coincided with enemy intelligence activities that were now actively hunting for deep-cover American operatives. The timing suggested either an extraordinary coincidence or the possibility that her analysis had somehow been compromised and shared with hostile services. Navy captain wearing the Joint Special Operations Command badge consulted a tablet before addressing Maya directly. Rodriguez, we need you to focus specifically on the operative using the Ghost 7 Callsign. Based on your technical analysis, can you determine their most likely current operational area? Maya flipped through her documentation, finding the pages dedicated to Ghost 7's activities. Based on signal collection patterns and operational tempo, Ghost 7 appears to be operating in the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region, most likely in the tribal areas where communications infrastructure is limited, but insurgent activity is high. The technical signatures suggest mobile operations using portable collection equipment. How current is this assessment? The CIA analyst asked. The most recent intelligence products attributed to Ghost 7 are dated within the past 2 weeks. Signal strength and propagation characteristics suggest operations in mountainous terrain with limited infrastructure, consistent with the tribal border regions. General Morrison exchanged meaningful looks with the other officials before continuing. Rodriguez, what we're about to share with you is classified at the highest levels and requires your complete discretion. The Ghost 7 operative you've been tracking has been conducting a mission of critical national importance for the past 3 years. Their intelligence collection has prevented multiple terrorist attacks and provided crucial insights into foreign intelligence operations targeting American forces. Maya felt a chill of understanding. Ma'am, are you saying that Elena Vasquez is still alive and operating under the Ghost 7 Callsign? We're saying that the individual using that Callsign has been conducting authorized operations under deep cover, protected by official documentation of their supposed death. But your analysis, combined with apparently parallel assessments by Hostile intelligence services has compromised that operational security. The Joint Special Operations Command Captain activated a secure communication system, speaking briefly with someone at a distant location before turning back to the group. Our operational commanders report increased enemy activity in the suspected operational areas. Communications intercepts suggest that hostile forces are actively searching for American operatives who were supposed to be dead. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. Maya realized that her analytical precision had created a crisis that could cost lives. Her methodical documentation of technical inconsistencies had inadvertently exposed one of the most successful deep cover operations in recent military history. Elena Vasquez, whoever she really was now in immediate danger because Maya had been too thorough in her analysis. "What can I do to help?" Maya asked, setting aside her own concerns about career implications. "If my analysis created this problem, I want to help solve it." General Morrison studied Maya for a long moment before responding. "Rodriguez, we need you to use your analytical capabilities to help us locate and extract the Ghost 7 operative before hostile forces can capture or eliminate them. Your understanding of their operational patterns and technical capabilities makes you uniquely qualified to predict their likely movements and communication windows." The CIA analyst activated a wall-mounted display showing a detailed topographical map of the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region. "Based on your technical analysis, can you identify areas where Ghost 7 would be most likely to attempt extraction or emergency communication?" Maya studied the map, overlaying her understanding of signal propagation, terrain masking, and communication protocols. "Given the equipment capabilities I've documented, Ghost 7 would need elevated terrain with clear lines of sight for satellite communication. But they'd also need areas with sufficient cover and concealment to avoid enemy observation." She pointed to several locations on the map. These ridgelines would provide the necessary technical capabilities while offering multiple escape routes. "If I were conducting emergency communications from this operational area, I'd use these positions during specific atmospheric conditions that optimize signal propagation." The Joint Special Operations Command Captain made notes on his tablet. "Can you calculate optimal communication windows based on atmospheric conditions and satellite coverage?" "Yes, sir." "Give me access to current atmospheric data and satellite ephemeris information, and I can predict when and where Ghost 7 would be most likely to attempt emergency communications." General Morrison nodded approvingly. "Rodriguez, you're being temporarily assigned to the joint task force responsible for this extraction operation. Your analytical capabilities may be the key to bringing our operative home safely." As the briefing concluded, Maya found herself committed to an operation that would either validate her analytical skills or result in the death of an operative whose existence she had inadvertently exposed. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming, but it was also clarifying. For the first time since arriving at Fort Braxton, Maya's methodical approach to intelligence analysis was being recognized as exactly the capability that was needed. But as she prepared to begin her work with the extraction task force, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that there were still pieces of this puzzle that didn't fit together properly. The timing of hostile intelligence activities, the sophistication of the Project Lazarus deception protocols, and her own role in exposing the operation seemed too coincidental to be entirely random. Maya was about to discover that sometimes the most important intelligence comes not from analyzing what's in the files, but from understanding what's been deliberately left out. And sometimes the person conducting the analysis becomes a more important part of the operation than they ever intended to be. The Emergency Operations Center hummed with the controlled chaos of a time-sensitive mission. Maya found herself at the center of a multi-agency task force that included the most experienced intelligence analysts and special operations planners in the military. Wall-mounted displays showed real-time satellite feeds, communications intercepts, and tactical maps of the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region where Ghost 7 was believed to be operating. Maya worked at a terminal equipped with atmospheric modeling software, satellite tracking systems, and signal propagation analysis tools that were far more sophisticated than anything she'd used during her regular assignments. Her task was to predict when and where the Ghost 7 operative would attempt emergency communications, using her detailed understanding of their operational patterns and technical capabilities. Rodriguez called Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chun from the Defense Intelligence Agency. We're receiving reports of increased enemy communications in the suspected operational area. Can you narrow down the probable location based on hostile activity patterns? Maya pulled up a map showing communications intercepts from the past 72 hours, overlaying them with her analysis of Ghost 7's likely operational requirements. Ma'am, the enemy communications are concentrated in these 3 valleys, but that's actually good news for us. Ghost 7 would avoid areas with high enemy activity, which means they're probably operating from these elevated positions that offer observation of the valleys, but remain outside the concentration of hostile forces. Colonel James Harrison from the Inspector General's office studied the map from over Maya's shoulder. Your analysis suggests they're conducting surveillance of enemy activities while remaining hidden. What would be their communication requirements? In that scenario, they'd need periodic intelligence transmission to report enemy movements, but they'd also need emergency extraction communication if their position becomes compromised. Based on the equipment signatures I've documented, they're using portable satellite communication gear that requires clear sky access and specific orbital windows. Maya activated the satellite tracking display, showing the real-time positions of military communication satellites. The next optimal communication window opens in approximately 6 hours, during which time 3 different satellites will be in position for emergency transmission. If Ghost 7 follows their documented patterns, they'll attempt contact during this window. The operations center fell quiet as everyone processed the implications. 6 hours to locate and extract an operative who had been successfully hidden for 3 years in terrain that was now being actively searched by hostile forces who knew someone was there, but not exactly where. General Morrison activated the secure communication system connecting her to operational commanders in the field. Colonel Martinez, this is Braxton Control. We have analytical intelligence suggesting probable communication attempt in approximately 6 hours. Are extraction assets in position? The response came through clearly despite the satellite delay. Braxton Control, this is Falcon 6. Extraction teams are positioned at 3 probable landing zones. Weather is marginal but acceptable for night operations. Enemy activity has increased significantly in the past 12 hours. Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Lives were depending on her analysis being correct, on her understanding of Ghost 7's operational patterns, and on her ability to predict human behavior in life-threatening situations. But she also felt something else, a growing certainty that there were aspects of this situation that she still didn't fully understand. Colonel Harrison, Maya said, turning away from her terminal, I need to ask you something about the timing of this crisis. Is it possible that my analysis wasn't the only factor that compromised Ghost 7's operational security? Harrison exchanged a glance with General Morrison before responding. What are you thinking, Rodriguez? The hostile intelligence activities began almost immediately after I submitted my analysis to the task force. That suggests either an extraordinary coincidence or the possibility that there are other intelligence sources involved. Foreign intelligence services don't usually conduct major operations based on assumptions or possibilities. The CI analyst, who had been monitoring enemy communications, looked up from his workstation. Rodriguez raises a valid point. The enemy communications we're intercepting show a level of specificity that suggests they have more than analytical assessments to work with. They're searching for specific individuals in specific areas, not conducting general counterintelligence sweeps. Maya felt pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to align in her mind. What if my analysis didn't compromise Ghost 7's position? What if it identified a compromise that was already in progress? General Morrison moved to Maya's workstation, studying the technical analysis that covered her screens. Explain your reasoning. The intelligence products I attributed to Ghost 7 show subtle changes in operational patterns over the past 6 months. Earlier collections were conducted from more secure positions with better concealment. Recent intelligence suggests they've been forced to operate from less optimal locations, possibly because their preferred sites have been compromised. Maya pulled up her technical analysis, highlighting specific signal characteristics that had evolved over time. These changes in collection methodology suggest that Ghost 7 has been adapting to increased enemy pressure. They've been aware of the threat for months, possibly longer. The implications were sobering. If Maya's analysis was correct, the current crisis wasn't the result of her research compromising an ongoing operation. Instead, her research had identified an operation that was already under threat, possibly from a security breach that had been developing for months. Lieutenant Colonel Chun activated a secure telephone, speaking briefly with intelligence analysts at multiple agencies before returning to the group. Rodriguez, preliminary review of classified communications suggests, you may be correct. There are indicators of hostile intelligence interest in Project Lazarus operations, dating back at least 8 months. The operations center erupted in controlled activity as analysts began reviewing historical intelligence with this new perspective. If Ghost 7 had been operating under increased threat for months, it changed everything about the extraction planning and risk assessment. Maya returned to her technical analysis with renewed focus, looking for patterns that might indicate how long Ghost 7 had been aware of the threat to their operational security. The answer came in the form of communication timing changes that she'd initially attributed to operational requirements, but now recognized as security adaptations. General Morrison, Maya called out, her voice carrying new urgency. Ghost 7 has been modifying their communication patterns for the past 4 months, suggesting they've been aware of compromise for much longer than we realized. But there's something else. The modifications follow a specific pattern that suggests they're preparing for extraction. What kind of pattern? Morrison asked. Maya highlighted specific technical indicators on her display. They've been gradually moving their communication windows to align with optimal extraction conditions. Satellite coverage, weather patterns, terrain advantages for helicopter operations. It's subtle, but consistent. Ghost 7 has been systematically positioning themselves for emergency extraction, while maintaining their intelligence collection. Mission: the revelation changed the entire tactical situation. Ghost 7 wasn't a trapped operative waiting for rescue. They were a professional conducting a planned extraction while continuing their mission for as long as possible. Maya's analysis had identified not a crisis, but the culmination of a long-term operational plan. Colonel Harrison activated the field communication system. Falcon 6, this is Braxton Control. New intelligence suggests the subject may be conducting planned extraction rather than emergency extraction. Recommend shifting to coordinated extraction protocols. The response came back immediately. Braxton Control, understood. That explains some anomalous signals we've been receiving. Subject appears to be providing targeting intelligence for our approach routes. Maya felt a mixture of relief and professional satisfaction. Her analytical methods had not only identified the operational situation correctly, but had also revealed that Ghost 7 was actively facilitating their own extraction while continuing to provide valuable intelligence about enemy activities. But as the extraction operation moved into its final phases, Maya realized that her role in this crisis was far from over. The questions about operational security, foreign intelligence threats, and the broader implications of Project Lazarus operations remained unanswered. Her methodical analysis had solved the immediate problem of locating Ghost 7, but it had also revealed layers of complexity that would require continued investigation. The woman who had been dismissed as too slow for modern intelligence work had just demonstrated that sometimes the most important operational intelligence comes from taking the time to understand not just what's happening, but why it's happening and how long it's been developing. The extraction operation reached its critical phase at 0347 hours, with Maya monitoring communications from the operations center while special operations helicopters approached the mountainous terrain where Ghost 7 was positioned. Through her headset, she could hear the tactical chatter between pilots, navigating through challenging weather conditions and terrain that offered minimal margin for error. "Falcon 6, this is Nightbird 1, came the voice of the lead helicopter. "Pilot, we're approaching the primary landing zone. Visibility is limited, but we're receiving navigation assistance from an unknown source. Someone down there is providing precise wind corrections and approach vectors." Maya felt her pulse quicken as she recognized the implications. Ghost 7 wasn't just waiting for extraction. They were actively controlling the operation, using their intimate knowledge of local conditions and their sophisticated communications equipment. Her analysis of their technical capabilities was being validated in real time as the operative demonstrated exactly the kind of precision support that their equipment signatures had suggested. "Braxton Control, this is Falcon 6, reported the ground commander. "We're receiving detailed intelligence about enemy positions from the extraction site. Subject appears to have comprehensive surveillance of the entire operational area. This is some of the best tactical intelligence I've seen in 15 years of operations. Tradecraft, but on understanding how patterns of activity appear to analytical assessment over extended time periods. Deep cover operations must be designed from the beginning to resist the kind of systematic analysis that modern intelligence services can conduct." General Morrison stood to address the audience, his expression reflecting the institutional changes that Maya's work had generated. "The analytical capabilities that Specialist Rodriguez has demonstrated represent a fundamental advancement in our understanding of covert operations. Based on her findings, we're implementing comprehensive changes to how deep cover missions are planned, executed, and protected." The changes Morrison described were extensive and reflected lessons learned from the Project Lazarus investigation. New protocols required analytical assessment of operational patterns before missions were approved. Cover stories were being developed with greater attention to how they would appear to systematic analytical review. Most importantly, extraction procedures were being planned from the beginning of operations rather than being improvised during crisis situations. "Specialist Rodriguez," Morrison continued, "has been selected to lead the new Analytical Operations Division, with responsibility for applying these methodologies to support current operations and protect future missions. Her analytical approach has proven that sometimes the most important operational intelligence comes from taking the time to understand complex patterns that aren't visible through rapid assessment." Maya felt a moment of reflection on how dramatically her career had changed since her arrival at Fort Braxton. The dismissive evaluation that had labeled her too slow for modern intelligence work now seemed like evidence that the evaluation standards themselves had been flawed. Her methodical approach to analysis had proven essential for exactly the kind of complex intelligence challenges that modern military operations generated. Elena approached the podium as Maya concluded her formal presentation, representing the operational perspective on the analytical methods that had been developed. "From an operator's viewpoint," Elena said, "Specialist Rodriguez's analytical capabilities represent the difference between successful covert operations and mission failure. The precision and patience that characterize her approach are exactly What's needed to understand the complex operational environments where deep cover missions are conducted. The questions from the audience reflected the high-level attention that Maya's work had generated. Officials wanted to understand how the analytical methods could be applied to other operational challenges, how they could be protected from hostile intelligence services, and how they could be integrated into existing intelligence collection and analysis procedures. Maya answered each question with the same methodical precision that had characterized her original archive research, explaining technical details while maintaining focus on operational applications. Her responses demonstrated not just analytical capability, but the kind of operational awareness that came from working directly with extracted operatives and understanding the real-world implications of intelligence assessment. The most important lesson from this investigation, Maya said in response to a question about future applications, is that analytical accuracy often requires resisting pressure to provide rapid assessments. The Project Lazarus operatives were successfully hidden for years because their operational security was designed for long-term effectiveness, not short-term convenience. Our analytical methods must match that level of patience and precision. As the briefing concluded, Maya found herself surrounded by officials who wanted to discuss specific applications of her analytical methods to their own operational challenges. The woman who had once been relegated to archive duty was now being consulted by senior leaders about some of the most sensitive intelligence operations conducted by the United States military. Elena joined Maya as the auditorium began to empty. The two women who had never officially met, but whose analytical and operational capabilities had proven complementary in ways that neither could have predicted. "Rodriguez," Elena said, "your analytical work didn't just save my life and the lives of 11 other operatives. It changed how the entire intelligence community thinks about the relationship between speed and accuracy in operational analysis." Maya nodded, understanding that the real significance of her work extended beyond the specific extractions that had been conducted. "The archive research taught me that the most important patterns often aren't visible until you take the time to look at them from multiple perspectives over extended time periods. Intelligence work is fundamentally about understanding complexity, not simplifying it." That evening, Maya walked across the Fort Braxton grounds where her journey had begun months earlier. The buildings looked the same, but her role and the institution's understanding of analytical work had been fundamentally transformed. The archives where she had been exiled were now being reorganized as a center for advanced analytical research, with resources and personnel that reflected their importance to operational success. The woman who had been dismissed for being too slow, too methodical, and too focused on details had proven that sometimes those very characteristics were exactly what was needed to solve the most complex and important intelligence challenges. Maya's patient analytical approach had not just rescued 12 operatives. It had established new standards for how intelligence work should be conducted when precision matters more than speed. In her new office, Maya kept the worn notebook that had started everything, its pages now filled with methodologies that were being taught to intelligence analysts throughout the military. The woman who had been written off as inadequate for modern intelligence work had instead rewritten the standards for what modern intelligence work should be. 3 years later, Maya received an encrypted message that made her smile. It was from a new deep cover operative, Callsign Archive 1, reporting successful insertion into a denied area. The message included technical details that followed every protocol Maya had developed, operational security that reflected lessons learned from Project Lazarus, and a single line that said everything: precision over speed, always. Elena, now running advanced training for deep cover operatives, stopped by Maya's office that afternoon. "Did you see the message from Archive 1? "I did. Perfect operational security, textbook communication protocols. Whoever trained them did excellent work." Elena grinned. "That would be you, Rodriguez." Your analytical methods are now standard curriculum for every covert operative we train. They're learning patience, precision, and the art of being invisible. To analytical assessment. Maya looked out her window at Fort Braxton, where a new generation of intelligence analysts was learning that sometimes the most important discoveries come from slowing down long enough to see what everyone else is missing. The archives had been expanded into a world-class analytical training center where methodical research was valued as highly as rapid processing. You know what the best part is? Maya said, somewhere out there, hostile intelligence services are probably trying to figure out why their analytical methods stopped working. They're looking for American operatives using the same techniques that used to be effective. But now our people are trained to be invisible to exactly those kinds of assessments. Elena nodded approvingly. The student became the teacher, and the teacher changed everything. That evening, Maya updated her training materials with lessons from Archive 1's successful insertion, continuing the cycle of analytical improvement that had begun in a basement archive with a worn notebook and a woman who refused to accept that being thorough was a weakness. What did you think of Maya's incredible journey from dismissed analyst to intelligence revolutionary? Her story proves that sometimes our greatest strengths are hidden in what others see as weaknesses. If you enjoyed discovering how patience and precision can change everything, hit that subscribe button and join our community of everyday heroes. Drop a comment below telling us about a time when being too slow or too careful actually saved the day. Where are you watching from? We love hearing from viewers around the world who understand that the most important victories often happen quietly, one careful observation at a time.